Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. In each episode, we bring together leaders from optometry, optical dispensing, and business to share insights, practical strategies, and the latest developments shaping independent practice today. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore how innovation, collaboration, and smart business thinking can drive growth, enhance patient care, and strengthen the future of independent optometry. Whether you're a student, an early career professional, or an established practice owner, The Focused View is your go-to source for knowledge, inspiration, and connection. The Focused View is brought to you by Vision Connection, supporting independent eye care professionals across Australia through collaboration, education, and business growth. By working closely with leading suppliers and industry partners, Vision Connection offers unique opportunities that help independents stand out and succeed. To find out more, visit their website, visionconnection.com.au. On today's episode of The Focused View, we're joined by Allyson Freind from Northam Optical, an independent practice in WA that's become a strong example of what's possible when genuine community connection is paired with thoughtful, disciplined business leadership. Ali shares her journey into optics, how Northam Optical came to be, and what it really takes to build and sustain a successful rural practice. We unpack what makes running an independent practice in a community like Northam unique, the mindset and decisions that help Northam Optical be recognised as Independent Practice of the Year in 2025, and the role community engagement has played into the practice's growth. Ali also reflects on her broader contribution to the profession through her involvement with Optical Dispensers Australia, her experience participating in the Fiji program, and why training, education, and recognition of optical dispensing as a profession matters now more than ever. This is a grounded, practical conversation about leadership, values, and building a resilient independent practice, particularly for those operating outside of the major metro markets. So let's get into it. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for having me.
No problems at all. I mean, congratulations on your award, first and foremost.
Thank you. Absolute honour.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the conversation today and breaking it down and sort of learning, that recipe that you've built out there in Northam, and I guess all the goings and comings for the practice, and I guess your take on things. Obviously we're pretty familiar with your story, and it's a really empowering and positive one. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that today. But before we get into all of that, and for the context of the listeners, can you tell us a bit about your background and I guess how Northam Optical came to be and how you ended up in optics?
Well, I really fell into optics. I was looking for a job back in my hometown, and an optometrist was looking for a receptionist, so I put my name down, and the rest is kind of history. I started just doing reception for 7 years, and that grew into doing a little bit of dispensing in store, and then I moved to Mandurah and managed Adjust Spectacles for quite a few years, and then I moved back to Northam and worked for an independent practice where I did my certificate 4 in optical dispensing. Really, really enjoyed it because being in the industry for quite a few years, I needed to know the fundamentals behind, not just the practical stuff. So it was really great to do my certificate 4, and then I decided to branch out on my own because I was in a practice that was kind of a little bit stagnant and they weren't really ready for change. So I thought I can do this for myself.
How good's that? And just for some context, can you tell us about Northam as the area, because that's where you're based? I know it's regional, but I guess for the listeners, some context as to Northam's location and what makes it special.
Northam's a little country town. We're about an hour and a half from Perth. And we're a wheat belt town, so we're farming wheat and sheep. But Northam's also a hub for a lot of little other towns. So we've got lots of services in Northam. So there's lots of medical and, big stores and that kind of thing. So we do pull quite a few people from other areas.
Okay.
we've got a population of around 6,000 people, so we're pretty small.
And the catchment area for Northam itself, so if you're servicing some other little towns around that, is it much more than the 6,000, or is it around that?
Yeah. I think it bumps up to about 8,000 with the surrounding towns.
Okay. And I guess if we sort of go back to the optics conversation, you applied for that role. Was it something that you wanted to do, or was it something that you just fell into? Was it something you were drawn into initially? Why optics when you sort of look back on it and sort of think, well, was it just a fluke, or was there something more to it?
It certainly was a fluke.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of a career in optics ever. Mm-hmm. Hadn't even thought about it. But what an amazing industry to be in.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I guess if that speaks to what's kept you in it, like what is it, I guess, all these years down the track that keeps you inspired to be in the industry and as passionate as you have been?
What's kept me in the industry, I love the fashion side of things, but also the medical side of things is really interesting as well. So we've got really two sides of a coin there. But also there's just so much growth happening all of the time. So it really keeps you interested.
Yeah. And did you always see yourself running your own practice? I mean, you obviously had that thought, you said, I can do this myself, and obviously, we'll go into the venture and how that's all sort of being played out for you. But was it something that, again, didn't see optics, but ended up in it, loving it? At what point did you sort of see yourself running your own practice, or was that something that evolved naturally? Was it something that you always thought you wanted to do, is in be a business owner? How did that evolve over the time that, I guess in those initial days?
Small business isn't foreign to me. My parents have got a local small business, so I've been around it all my life. But it's nothing I had really considered before to run my own business. But it wasn't anything foreign either, so it was quite a comfort to go into it. Nothing that I searched for, but it just really came naturally that when I couldn't progress any further where I was working at the time, that I thought, yeah, let's give it a crack.
Yeah, that's the attitude, right? So it's an awesome one to have. Okay, so if we sort of focus in now on running a successful rural practice, and obviously that's relative to you, in your eyes, what makes running an independent practice in a rural community like Northam unique compared to the bigger cities? And have you had exposure to bigger city, I guess, practices along the way?
Yeah, I have. So working in Mandurah is almost like a city. It's quite a big town. I think the difference between the city and the country is customer loyalty. We've just got such a loyal base that has then grown through generations. So, it's come from people who were customers of my dad's at a mechanics, then came and followed me, and then they've brought their kids along and they've brought their parents along, and it's loyalty. There's nothing more to it.
And you've recently won, as we mentioned from the top, the Independent Practice of the Year. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
What do you think sets your practice apart? And that's a national award, and all independents are obviously eligible for that. But what do you think sets your practice apart and helped you achieve that recognition?
We dedicate ourselves to our customer satisfaction. That is number one. We want everybody who walks out of our store to be fully satisfied that they got good value for money, great customer service. That's number one. Another thing is ongoing training for our staff is a must. We need to be on top of our game and, to have our knowledge base right up the top.
I mean, I think education is a really critical aspect of it. And especially when you're talking about the longevity within the industry and that evolution, I feel like when I speak to people along the way, the one thing with the passionate people in particular that they're drawn to is that education and evolution. It doesn't stop and it continues. So recognizing that, I think, and offering that benefit to your patients is really powerful. And obviously your patients will value that, and your community too, in your case as well, because I feel like as an independent in a regional setting, you do probably see a broad range of, circumstances and conditions. I mean, a lot of, and again, in metro areas, a lot of people create specializations as a point of difference. And when you're in rural, I feel like you might do that. But there is also the fact that there almost isn't that many options. And so that's the case. You see a lot more broader range of conditions. Would it be fair to say that?
Oh, absolutely. And now we've been known to, if someone's got something tricky and they haven't been able to, be satisfied anywhere else, they're coming to us.
Yeah.
They're being recommended to us because, we do need to have that really broad knowledge base.
Looking back at it all, and I guess leading up to the award and getting the award, but I guess in that journey up until that point, was there a particular moment or was there a milestone when you felt things really clicked for the business? I mean, if you look at that business journey in terms of starting out and learning, the trade, I guess, from the point of view of being a business owner, as well as obviously being the dispenser, was there a moment where you're like, oh, I figured this out, or this is something that is working? Or was there any moment in time or a milestone or something that, you were able to achieve at that point that was like, yeah, I think I'm getting this?
I think COVID was a major turning point for us. Okay. Unfortunately, for some areas, COVID was really detrimental, but for us, it was actually it was amazing. It was a game changer. So when the regional lockdowns happened, because we're so close to Perth, people would get in the car and go and have their eye test in Perth, and they weren't really shopping locally as much as they could have been. And when the regional lockdowns happened, they weren't able to get to Perth. And we picked up a lot of clients who stayed loyal to us now because they realise they can get that service in their hometown.
Yeah, right. That's a really interesting point. I feel like with COVID, there are so many things that changed, sort of there's almost that pre and post COVID mentality now. And, even doing things like this and having it remote, like, pre-COVID, this would have almost been, not thought of. And now Zooms and team meetings, and it's also common. But, that point of the importance of locality and what that can do and opening that up for you. I mean, that's I guess, a really interesting concept. Was there anything else that you witnessed throughout that COVID period, other than having more people getting to know you? Was there anything else in the community that you sensed that affected business or that helped business?
I think just the same thing, the loyalty, where people were just staying local and just shopping locally and discovering, local businesses back again.
And that seems to be something that still exists today, right? Like that didn't really fade. Like there is still that's just continued on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Over now to, I guess, the importance of the community. And we've spoken about that already a few times today. When it comes to the local community and supporting it in the way that you run Northam Optical as well, how do you go about building the connections within the community? And how do you foster those and grow those?
So when we're looking to purchase anything, we make sure that we try and shop locally first. If we want people to come and support us, we've got to be supporting other local businesses as well. 9 times out of 10, those people then become your clients. So it's a win-win. We also support local sporting clubs. We've also got one of our clients is doing her first expo. She runs it's called the Rural Movement.
Okay.
And she's doing a health and wellness expo that we're being part of in October. So we're really excited about doing that with her.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of takeaways. I mean, obviously there are people that are listening to this that might be in the metro setting. And, being in the metro setting, you might think, oh, well, rural is totally different to how I run my practice. And so I'm not going to learn much out of this. But I think from what I see, there are elements that rural practices do really well. And I think one of those is community. And I think that's just something that happens naturally because, it's a smaller community and so you can invest a lot more in it. But one of the main things I think that if you're in the metro area and you're listening to this, it's like, I think the power of the connection with the local community is, and most independent practices, most of the customers come in the metro setting from a 5 to 7K radius from where the store's located. Obviously a little bit broader in your context, but the essence of that community, no matter how big it is there is a community, recognizing it, being a part of it, and really sort of working on those connections. A lot of people like to use the word networking, and I think networking is now, I wouldn't say it's a word like almost like sales. It's like, networking sales. Like, I don't want to do that. That's not what I do. But I think the word that I've been coming across quite a lot lately is connections and connecting. And I feel like more connections that you can make in your local community, the better it is, because it doesn't matter how big or small it is from a kilometre or a radius point of view. Once you know who they are and you're serving them, it does change the way that you go about, doing things. When it comes to, say, sponsorships specifically, because that's something that people could take up, how do you go about picking what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. Like, how do you pick and choose what events you're going to be a part of? You've mentioned, the new expo and being a part of that. What are some of the criteria that you use to sort of see where you're going to align your brand and your name with when it comes to that connecting?
Look, I'm happy to support anybody who needs help. It doesn't always have to have anything in the end game for myself, but 9 times out of 10 it does. Like, I started sponsoring a bowls event, and they just needed a sponsor, so I was happy to sponsor. And lo and behold, it's our target market. So we then got a heap of clients out of it. But then, they come into the store and it's not like working at all. We don't even really do much work. Yeah. We just talk about social stuff. So it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think finding that enjoyment in what you do is a bit of a secret sauce, I guess, from that point of view, because it doesn't become work. But it does potentially maybe create some interesting dynamics that you've got to be mindful of, because I'm sure there have been times where you've got to balance that, because at some point you're running a business. And, I guess, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you've got to balance being that social community, person from that point of view, and then, being clear about the business and running a business? But do you feel like there's a clear distinction there, or do you feel that it happens naturally, in serving the community and being that person? People understand the boundaries of business and what you may or may not be able to do or can or can't do.
I think I learned a lot from my mum and dad having a small business early on the piece. Just being mindful about giving your mobile phone number out and that kind of thing can be, So, but on the flip side, I love the fact that I go down the street and someone will approach me and say, gee, I need to book an eye test. That really doesn't bother me at all. And I'll write a note and I'll go back to the practice and I'll give them a ring and book them in, because, life gets busy. I had one incident that happened to me in store early in on the piece in my own practice, where a lady who I've known for a long time, she fell over in the main street and actually broke her leg. And someone carried her to my store. She said, I know, Ally, can you take me to her store? And then we had to ring ambulances, and she had to be picked up by the ambulance. But I thought, I really loved the fact that she felt she could come to the store. There wasn't like, oh no, that's her business, I can't do that, and lay on the street, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That was lovely.
Yeah, and do you think that that's because we're in the healthcare profession in some capacity? Something you spoke about earlier was the fact that, what you love about the industry is that there is a healthcare and a clinical component to ours, as well as a fashion. And there's not many industries, if any, that tie both of them in together. So it enables you to provide a service and a level of care which is over and above, say, a standard retail operation. And so that people see you as that person who's providing care, and so it's that trusted figure. Did you feel like that would be part of that as well?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And I guess it speaks to the power of the industry and the power of what we do in terms of, the industry that we serve and the benefits of that. And I think what you mentioned there, I mean, you said you learned it from your parents with regards to, not giving mobile numbers out, trying to be that clear distinction between personal and business. It's a really simple concept to grasp and can be delivered in a simple way. But it's just those key elements that you need to be aware, because I'm sure, there are instances where people can take advantage of that, and not to say that they mean to, but they do it perhaps unknowingly. So knowing that, I guess, is a little bit of a challenge too. Something you've mentioned along the way is education and the importance of education. Obviously, your professional values coincide with the industry collaboration, I feel that, that you're a part of, and that definitely is something I wanted to touch on. You're involved with the ODA and the ODA board. Can you speak to me as to why this is so important for you to contribute to the profession just beyond running your store?
I'm really passionate about the industry. I feel very privileged to be part of the future, because I'm not going anywhere. I've got a long life still in optics, but I'd love to be able to shape the future of it as well.
And if we speak to that, what is it that you want to see more of in the industry? And do you think there are things that it's lacking?
I think there is such a big, vast difference in the quality that you get from one dispenser to another. And that would be really nice if we could tighten that up and have a really optical dispensers could have such a shining light, because to be a dispenser is no mean feat. There is so much knowledge that you need. It would be really nice if they tightened up the
regulation for it. And
regulation, yes.
Yeah. And I guess, you're speaking to the fact there that almost anyone could be called a dispenser, and what, vehicles like the ODA board do, which is an awesome organisation. Abel's doing great work in bringing together dispensers to effectively upskill the profession, because we've gone through a period of there has been no community around the industry, around the profession specifically, and these vehicles do allow us to give back, as you've said. And I think education is one of those big areas that can help you upskill. So from that point of view, you said optical dispenser, and you've got a definition by yourself as to what that means. But I guess in large, like, what do you define an optical dispenser, and how should they be doing their work?
So I think at first, when I first came into optics, I was really lucky to be put under somebody who really knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. So if you can be guided by somebody who's got the knowledge base, I think that's your biggest starting point. If you can do that, and then, you grasp things as you go along. But there's also webinars like ODA do webinars on a Wednesday, where if, you're wanting to broaden your knowledge, you can do that.
Yeah, I think always being invested in the industry and looking at ways that you can educate yourself, whether it's through your suppliers, whether it's through, industry associations, or whether it's through the ODA and their, their webinar Wednesdays, or the other activities that they do. I think that's a big part of it. And it's a part that seems to be gaining more traction. I feel like we did steer away from that, but it seems to be coming back to the fore, which is really positive. The other thing that the industry and the professions enabled you to do is to actually partake in some, in some community work outside of Northam, and specifically internationally in Fiji. And you recently took part in the Fiji program with the ODA. Can you share a bit more about the experience and what it meant to you, and I guess why giving back in that sense is so important?
How long have you got?
I don't know, as long as you want to go. We'll see how we go.
What an experience. It makes me tear up. You probably can see it. Amazing experience. This year was my second year going, so I got to go on the maiden voyage and then go back as a second time as one of the old ducks. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. Giving back, people came into work and was asking me, so you're going on this trip, is it costing you money? And I said, well, yeah, we've got to pay for our flights and our accommodation and that kind of thing. So like it's costing you money. I said, what you get from this is going to outweigh how much you've got to pay. I think we don't realise how lucky we are in Australia with the healthcare that we get for free.
Right.
These people are living on less than $2 a day. They don't even have a bed to sleep in. Wow. But when we went and, did our eye testing and free glasses, the joy on their faces was just priceless, absolutely priceless.
And I guess what perspective did that give you with regards to, the experience that they have over there in Fiji compared to what we have back in, and what the service you're providing in Australia and in your store in particular? What was that perspective like for you, and what difference did that give you?
It was really different what we did on the ground in Fiji to what we normally do in store. So a lot of what we would normally do in stores, most dispensers would know, would be frame selection, lens selection. When we went to Fiji, we felt like we were mini optometrists. We got to do vision screening and near vision screening and helping the optometrists out. We did colour vision tests. Very different to what we do in store.
Did it change anything that you do in your store? Like, did you learn something in that experience that you were able to bring back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So with this rural movement expo that we're doing, I decided that we would put a stand in, and normally, I would take a selection of frames and sunglasses, but we're actually going to do vision screening there, so we can detect if there's any issues, and then booking in with the optometrist in store. So that's been brilliant to do.
Yeah, and that's something that really was that inspired by your experience in Fiji in terms of
Absolutely.
yeah, that's really
Yeah.
powerful, and I feel that's an awesome approach. We've spoken about education and training and a few times, but I just want to bring it back because I feel like it is at the core essence of what you value a lot. I guess if you're talking, and dispensers are listening today, what do you see as the value of training and education for optical dispensers? I mean, I was going to say in rural settings, but I think overall, like, how important is it, do you think, and what should dispensers be aiming for or focusing on when it comes to training and education?
Look, there's so much available, and it doesn't always have to be reading a book. You can go to industry events, you can go and speak to your local reps. There is so much that you can do in a really fun setting. You can talk to your peers, and they are like worth gold. Talking to other people in the industry and how do you use this supplier? Have you had a problem with this? That's invaluable. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think the concept there of connecting, we spoke about connecting to the community. There is definitely a community within optics itself as a standalone community, and connecting in that community is just as important, I feel, because it obviously then gives you that ability to share and to converse with colleagues and to brainstorm, because generally most people have seen most of the problems out there. It's about connecting the dots and finding who's going to be able to help you in a particular set of circumstances that you may be in. So I think there's a really good point in that. What are some of the key principles and philosophies that guide how you operate Northam Optical on a day-to-day basis?
Like I said before, customer satisfaction is number one.
Yeah.
We make sure that our staff are trained not only in the areas that they're doing, but in the way that we want them to be approaching customers, in a friendly manner, all that kind of thing. It doesn't really come naturally for a lot of people, and we take pride in that. Communication within the team is really important. We don't have meetings as such, but we're always communicating on, if someone's been off one day, this is what happened and this is how we handled it and this is how we, do things going forward.
I think that's a great point. I think communication in the team itself and being connected with the team, it seems to be the recurring word for me today. So, ensuring that, whether it's through a meeting or whether it's through any other type, I think actively communicating with the team, I think just will obviously then, flow on to the service that you give your patients. When it comes to that big difference in terms of patient experience, obviously it seems to be the core operations of how you build your business and how you built your business. What do you believe makes the biggest difference in patient experience?
I feel that we've been really lucky being an independent store, that we are able to use whatever suppliers that we like. So if we're not quite happy with a product that someone is, supplying us, we can then change to a different supplier. I love the fact that, some places do some exceptional warranties that make us look really good. And then, it has a flow-on effect because the customer's really happy as well. So that's a really big, important one for me, to be able to select which suppliers I would like to deal with.
I think that speaks to the independent side of the industry. And obviously that's what we're really big advocates of. And that's predominantly the people that we speak to. Because when you're in independent practice, like you say, you do have the ability to pick and choose and to really, that's a flow-on effect to your patients. And so it makes total sense how you make that connection. So from that point of view, what does it mean to you to be an independent? And what are some of the key characteristics of independent practice that you like?
I like being able to make a decision. I like being able to go to speak to someone or go to an industry event and say that could work really well in our practice. And I don't have to wait 6 months to get it approved. I don't even know if that's what happens in,
Could do.
Yeah, but I can put it into practice as soon as I go back to the store. I love that. I quite enjoy grabbing the bull by its horns and saying, let's do this. We've just started a dry eye clinic in store.
Okay. How did that go? Can you speak about that?
So one of our optometrists is a really big dry eye advocate, and he's been mentoring me through what can work and how he would do things. And so we've just put it into practice and it's doing really well. So no other dry eye clinic in our town. So it's a point of difference between
Yeah, absolutely.
Us and the
I
big
guess
guys.
so. It speaks to the I guess being agile and being dynamic and being able to incorporate these services that you think your community needs, which then in turn has a flow and effect to the patient experience, because all of a sudden you're expanding your scope and you're providing more service to them. That would be a benefit. When it comes to, I guess, being an independent, having those options of, bringing in a new service offering, how do you go about determining whether you do it or don't do it? Like, what are your steps in all of that? Knowing that you could potentially do whatever you want, really, within the context of the business, how do you decipher what you're going to do and when you're going to do it and how you're going to do it?
Yeah, that's a pretty tricky one, actually. So going with this dry eye clinic, we looked at, spending a lot of money on an IPL machine and whether that was going to be worthwhile. So what we decided to do was do a little bit of a survey for all of our customers that came in, whether they were, first of all, a dry eye candidate, and then we can work out what percentage from there would benefit for having the IPL, and then get an idea of what people were willing to spend as well. Yeah, so we just did a little bit of a survey to begin with, and then worked out from there.
I think that's an awesome point, and what I like about that is it brings it back to your core offering, which is it's about the patient. And so what you're doing in an exercise like that is you're ascertaining with your patient base who you're going to provide the service to, whether it's of value to them, and if it is, what is that value? And as a business owner, you've always got to, there is that business component that you've got to factor in, and you know it better than most, because you've got the expenses that you need to be paid, you've got all the challenges that you need to be mindful of, and bringing an idea in is good, but is it going to be worthwhile? And to do something like a patient survey, I think, is a really simple but effective way. And I think it's a great tip for people listening if they're thinking about, incorporating that in. Because what that's probably enabled you to do is analyze your database too, and sort of say, well, what does that opportunity look like for me? And how can I really, deliver on that? And is it something that they want? And what can I potentially charge? So I think that's a great tip. Do you have any daily or weekly habits or routines that help you stay on top of things as a business owner?
I've got to say, I've only just started doing this because day-to-day running of a business is pretty hard. So I always felt like I needed to be on the floor serving customers all the time. But now I have enough staff who are very capable and highly trained. Now I spend one day in my office working on the business. And I have heard people talking about this before, and I'm like, how does that fit in? Well, you just make it fit in. You just set a day aside and you just lock it in. And it's amazing the amount of stuff that you can get done. And I'm terrible. Like, you get more staff and you think, oh, we're on top of things now. I just put more on the plate. I'm like, now we can do this.
Yeah, no, I guess there is that, everyone says work on the business, not in the business. You got to do a little bit of both, I think, in the nature of small business. But being able to do that, I guess, what are some of the main benefits you've seen from allocating that time now that you know that you kind of, need to do it? What are some of the other benefits that you've seen that have come out of that?
Benefits for me, the stress level is so much less. So that's always a bonus because it has a flow and effect everywhere.
Yeah.
But also I get time to spend on things that I never had time to do before. So a lot more social media stuff that I would just push to the side. And just cleaning up, like we've just recently got a new email address. So we've just, I've spent the morning emailing all of our suppliers saying this is our new email address. I would have been trying to fit that in around serving customers, and really hard.
No, absolutely. And you get so caught in the day-to-day grind of running the business and being in the business that there are those broader picture, I guess, items that, again, an email address is a good example of that you just, okay, that's not so really, it's important. I mean, I could do it. I have an email that works, but making the time to make that an important thing that gets done, I think makes total sense. Yeah, no, that's a great tip. We're starting to wrap it up now. And I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. I think it's been really insightful. And I know that, business owners that are listening to this are probably going to take away one or two really key things out of this, and hopefully they can employ it in their practice. But if you're going to give one piece of advice to another independent practice owner, especially one that's perhaps in smaller communities or more in the rural setting, what would that advice be?
Believe in yourself.
Yep.
We just won Independent Practice of the Year.
Yeah.
Believe in yourself.
And if we speak to that specifically, like, how did that make you feel? Like, getting that type of recognition amongst the industry and the community of optometrists and optical dispensers, What did that mean to you? And what was that, I guess, in reflection? How would you summarize that?
The biggest thing that I realised was how much loyalty we have within our customer base and my peers, because it was, first of all, a nomination. So someone had to nominate us. But then, second of all, it was all on public vote. So it couldn't be fudged. The numbers couldn't be fudged. You needed the most amount of votes. And being a small little town, that was crazy. I thought, there's no way. It's awesome to be nominated. What an absolute privilege.
Yeah.
But probably not going to get there. Well, look at us.
Well, that's it. And I think it's a true testament to everything that you've been doing there. I mean, you've built such an amazing business, and you've got an amazing work ethic, and you've just built something that's, the things that we've spoken about today have sort of been that journey as to how you've built that and what you've built. And I think it's a real credit to yourself in terms of what you've done there. And like you said, I mean, you've gone and you've won this award, and it's so inspiring. So congratulations. Thank you for sharing all that information. It's been an absolute pleasure spending time with you this morning and talking about it. And I appreciate you've enjoyed your time as well on the show.
Thank you so much, Michael.
And finally, for anyone who's looking to learn more about Northam Optical or to connect with you, what's the best way that they can get in touch?
Just head to our webpage and you can contact us through there.
Okay, cool. And we'll have those details in the show notes. So if anyone wants to reach out to Ali and ask her why she's been so successful and how she's been so successful, feel free to reach out to her. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to The Focused View. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review, subscribe on your preferred podcast app, and share it with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals across Australia. For additional resources and downloads, visit thefocusedview.com.au. I'm Michael Nasser. Until next time, keep focused.